Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Tournament Podcast. I am Marty with my brothers Tom and Mike, and this week's episode, we're going to go back to our roots. This topic is going to be WCW Best Wrestler / Best Worker of the Nitro Era. Now, keep in mind, Nitro ran from basically 1995 through basically the beginning of 2001. So this is the best WCW wrestler / best worker of the Nitro era. Now, the reason that I pointed out that it's of the Nitro era because there are at least a couple wrestlers who would win immediately if you're looking at the whole body of their work, but we're talking about this select like 6 years, I believe it is. So the topic of the best wrestler / best worker of the Nitro era, and here are the 16 wrestlers that I chose. The first one off the top, we have Nature Boy Ric Flair. That's why I mentioned we're only looking at this period of time. We have Sting, DDP, Booker T, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho, Rey Mysterio, Bret Hart, Kanyon, Curt Hennig, Ultimo Dragon, Lance Storm, Raven, Kidman, and Dean Malenko.
Nice.
The last two that didn't make the cut, because it took me quite a while.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of them I was immediately thinking of here, like, oh my gosh, why aren't they on the list? But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, maybe it's not because a few guys got cut out, right towards the end. But Saturn and Jeff Jarrett were the last two that I cut. Is there anybody you guys are like, oh my God?
Well, just in terms of, and again, when we do things like this, you got to really take the criteria. It can't just be open. You got to focus down on the criteria. My initial thought was Goldberg. But then if you're talking about best workers, then yes, Goldberg wouldn't make it. I actually was surprised Ric Flair made it if you're talking about workers, just because he was older. I mean, we love Rick. He's the GOAT. But, actually, and we had a previous podcast, the greatest pro wrestlers of all time, period. So if you haven't heard that, check that out, ladies and gentlemen.
Nice. And Ric Flair is the exact reason that I mentioned this is just of the Nitro era. So we kind of focused on that. But he still had some really good matches. And I'm glad you mentioned the criteria. Because I have the criteria set for when we talk about anyone that's not a, big wrestling fan may not know the terminology, but when they talk about the best worker, it's more or less someone that's very skilled in the ring that just is real smooth and just makes it look really good. So the criteria for this, I had it set as the most skilled in the ring, and again, for this era, most memorable matches, and if we needed like a tiebreaker, charisma / entertainment. And, to me, that can encompass their entrance, their in the ring style. So that's kind of the criteria. Most skilled in the ring, most memorable matches, and then for like a tiebreaker, charisma / entertainment value. So, as you guys know, here at the Tournament Podcast, matchups are everything. We do this tournament style, and we can't forget, if two of us agree, the third person can always use the dreaded veto. So that is always into play here. But we'll go ahead and we'll get started here, and you guys are listening to the fastest growing podcast in all the land, the Tournament Podcast.
And let me jump in here real quick. If you have not already done so, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video. We would greatly appreciate it. We are a small yet rapidly growing podcast. As Marty mentioned, the fastest growing podcast in the world. I mean, I don't know, looking at our statistics, possibly of all time. But
Nice.
even regardless, we're still small at this point, so any support would be appreciated.
And
That's all
I
have.
apologize. You can mark out or edit just this piece.
Nice.
I'm real quick throwing the names in the generator, so I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine.
I
Well,
forgot
while you're
about-
doing that, I won't edit this out. I will say it's interesting because one of my favorite all-time wrestlers of that Nitro generation, if you will, and in terms of just polish, skill, I mean, I'd almost be hard-pressed to if he would have been in this tournament, he probably would have been my dark horse to win the whole thing. It would be Saturn. I think he's just terribly, terribly underrated.
I agree.
I mean, a phenomenal wrestler. I mean, truly. Got stuck with some stupid gimmicks, but...
What, Moppy?
But, yeah, I mean, man, was he good, and he was innovative, and... Yeah,
well,
I mean...
Literally.
I've got to ask, Marty, did Yuji Nagata ever come to mind? Be honest. Yuji Nagata.
No, he didn't, but he was another very good worker.
Oh, he was. And I remember you were, if I remember, you were a mark of Yuji Nagata.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day.
Well, the great thing about Nitro, too, was literally, apart from like the top, 4 or 5 guys, you did not know who was going to win, especially like the mid card. It could be anybody each week. Like Yuji Nagata would win a title, Ultimo Dragon. It was just really.
Yeah. Well, it was one of the things that made it so special. But then also just a shout out, you did forget Van Hammer, but you can't put them all in there. You got to stop at 16. No. So.
Oh, that's true. But
that just means we can do a second part to this.
Nice.
You better
shout
believe
out
it.
to Rock and Roll Van Hammer.
You better believe
get him on the podcast.
Oh, yep.
And I have, a list that I was keeping, and then I was marking, some guys out. The last guy that actually made it in this list was Kidman. And believe it or not, it was down between Kidman and Saturn. Since you mentioned Saturn being one of your favorites, and I appreciate Saturn too. He barely missed out on this. And then Jeff Jarrett was pretty much the other of the last two
out.
Not a
huge Jeff Jarrett fan work-wise. Not that he was bad, but I don't want to start going down a different path. This is your show.
Yep, and Mr. Jarrett, we appreciate his support. He's a follower, at least on some of our social media.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we have, I've entered all of the participants in our proprietary tournament generator. So we're going to go ahead and generate this. Okay. Woo. If you guys are ready for this, we're going to get down to it. The first matchup is already, and we say this every week, boy, it's a tough one. Our opening matchup is going to be Billy Kidman against Ultimo Dragon.
Oh Jesus.
And again, keep in mind the criteria. The most skilled in the ring, then who had the most memorable matches, and if you need a tiebreaker, charisma / entertainment value. And one of you guys can take this first. I'll say, Tom, you go first.
Okay, well, yeah, you're not kidding when you say this is a tough one, because if you look at the criteria that you've given us to make the selection, they're pretty much equal on every piece of footing. Work and skill, and there may be some people listening to this that aren't maybe not familiar with Ultimo, and probably not Kidman, a lot of folks either. I mean, my gosh, YouTube and watch some of these. I am imagining they probably met at some point as well. Now, when we're going back 20 plus years here, or I guess not 20 plus, but 20-ish years, you're really testing my memory for the memorable matches part of this.
Okay.
But, work and skill, I mean, golly, I've always thought, just like Saturn, the world of Kidman. He's one of those guys that I just don't think got the push that he deserved. The size, off to the side. I don't, I think they put too much stock into that sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
But, and he was a champion, but, never obviously up to the level where his skill, in my opinion, lent him to be. Ultimo, obviously, I mean, not, the huge push over here. Obviously, he was bigger in Japan. Boy, charisma, though, again, it's kind of unfair because you're going with the masked wrestler. And Kidman did have some charisma now. Kidman wasn't bad on the mic. Well, yeah, and I don't want to get into one of these where I'm taking 5 minutes again to blabber on and make a selection. So I'm just going to kind of use gut a little bit in these as my extra piece of criteria. I'm going to go with Kidman in this one. I think he was just fantastic, underrated. I don't know how that can be, but he was. He was good on the mic. Not great, but pretty darn good on the mic. So I'm going to go with Kidman. And he was able to wrestle in a pair of jeans, which is impressive, just like Saturn was.
Yep, kind of jean shorts, which, right? They were.
Oh,
well, that's true. Yeah,
they were jorts.
Well, yeah, it depends on how you look at it.
You could say Kidman blazed the way for people like John Cena. So Kidman was a trendsetter.
That's true. That's true. Mike, you want to go next?
Oh, not really, but I will. Yeah, I agree with what Tommy said. This is a tough one because skill level, they were kind of on the same level, and again, yeah, memorable matches. I don't think any of them had any. I mean, they both were part of some fantastic matches, but none that stick out as being like match of the year or anything where you just instantly think about it. So this is a tough one. But just to kind of make it quick here, for most skilled, it's kind of a toss-up. Even though it's not really part of the criteria, I'm going to go with Ultimo for most skilled. You could go either way, but since Ultimo, because I think Kidman was a 2 or 3-time Cruiserweight champ. Ultimo, on the other hand, I believe was Cruiserweight champ, TV champion. Of course, he had at one point he had like 7 or 8 belts from all over the world.
Yep.
So since it's kind of hard to really pick one over the other as far as just in ring work, I'm gonna kind of make that my deciding factor. So I'll go with Ultimo.
Nice.
Memorable matches. I think I'm actually gonna go with Ultimo as well. Because I remember, I believe, was it Ultimo and I want to say, who was it? Was it Ultimo and Rey Mysterio, possibly? At Starrcade one year, and I think that's when Ultimo won one of the titles. Since it's been, 25 years or so, I can't remember which one, but I believe he won one of his titles, maybe his first WCW title at Starrcade, which, of course, as we know, for WCW was, their WrestleMania. So, having won a title at Starrcade, pretty big deal. So, I do remember enjoying that match as a young man. Yeah, Kidman had some darn good matches too, but I'm gonna go with Ultimo just because of that crowning moment at Starrcade. So, just based on those two, most skilled, memorable matches for both, I'm going Ultimo. So, as much respect as I have for Kidman, and I was a fan of Kidman, so, give a shout out to him. But I think in this matchup, I'm going with Ultimo. So, Marty will be the tiebreaker right out of the gate.
And let me add in something here real quick. Just maybe this will sway Marty. We have to, or you can't forget, I should say, you have to remember that Kidman also at one point was, I guess, managed / valeted by the lovely Tori Wilson.
That's true.
And
Oh, and
that's
then
got to
was
count for
married.
something. But we are also efforting
Mhm.
Tori to be on the podcast, so if she hears this, maybe that'll sway her decision.
Yep, and she was his valet, and off screen they were together as well. So
Nice.
And
shout out
just
to Kidman.
and I just double checked and just to correct myself, the Ultimo won the Cruiserweight Championship from actually Dean Malenko at Starrcade '96. So it
Okay, I
was
do recall
Malenko and
that.
Ultimo. Yeah, and I remember enjoying that match as a youngster. So
Nice.
Ultimo, you get my pick. Marty, what's it gonna
Whew.
be?
Well, right out of the gate, I'm put on the hot seat, and I think this is a very, very tough matchup. Kidman started out, again in the Nitro era with this kind of, I don't know if you'd call it a goofy gimmick. I mean, Raven's flock, I got the gist of it. Kidman was always like itching himself and
Oh,
looking dirty and scratching, and so it was kind of bizarre. Once he finally broke out from them and became, a baby face, he did shine. Kidman, fantastic wrestler. Um, to me, Kidman was definitely the superior high flyer of the two. But when I think of all around wrestling, and I'm a big fan of kind of the mat based wrestling, I more than these high flyers. I'm gonna give Ultimo the edge with most skilled, but it's very close. When it comes to memorable matches, I know it's the criteria that I selected, but I agree with you both. Being 20 plus years, it is hard to sit back and think, oh man, I remember this match and that match. But honestly, for me, I was definitely more of a fan of Ultimo Dragon's work, and I know that in my mind. Even though, again, Kidman was very good. Kidman's finish with that shooting star press was fantastic. But to just cut to the chase, I don't know if this is considered an upset, but I'm actually gonna go with Ultimo Dragon to take this. So
wait,
that would be
wait
two
a
for
minute.
Ultimo Dragon, which leads Tommy into the also precarious position of possible veto.
Is he gonna do it?
No, I'm not going to use the veto this early. And again, you look at it as okay, you'd be vetoing Ultimo Dragon from moving on, and I certainly don't feel strong enough that there's that much separation because there's not. I mean, I think you could flip a coin with these two. So
Yep, I agree. The next matchup, it doesn't get any easier for us. It is Raven versus Chris Benoit.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and this round we can just kind of go in reverse order. So I'll just do this one first. And this is another tough one. When you talk about most skilled in the ring, I think, right off the bat, I'm going to go with Chris Benoit. Even though Raven was a good worker, they had two distinct, different styles. But Chris Benoit was so smooth in the ring. And again, hopefully talking about him doesn't offend anyone because we're talking just on wrestling, nothing out of the ring and what happened, later in life. Chris Benoit was a tremendous wrestler, one of the best ever, I'd say. So I'm going with him on most skilled, memorable matches. I might actually go with Raven on that one because I remember Raven and DDT had some really good matches, and they had at one of the pay per views some type of like a Bayou Street Fight or something that they named it. And I remember it was extremely physical and really good. I know Raven and Chris Benoit had a series, and I specifically remember Chris Benoit giving a drop toe hold to Raven as he went down on a steel chair. But I'm going to go with Raven on most memorable matches, which leads to the charisma / entertainment value. Um, Benoit on the mic was never, you know, anything that would get you excited. I mean, he may have been adequate at best. Raven was very good promo. The Raven character, you either loved that character or hated it. Benoit was just great, but not flashy at all. Man, based on the criteria, this may be a shocker. Man, can't believe am I gonna say this?
Don't do it.
I'm gonna go with Raven. I'm
Oh,
not
no.
sure why. I'm actually thinking of changing it, but
Oh no.
I'm gonna go with Raven. And
I haven't even given my pick, and I may already veto.
Yeah, I mean,
well,
we've never had one of us actually veto ourselves, so this
Yep.
could be a first.
yeah, I'm just going by the criteria, and I'm going with Raven. But Mike, if you want to go next,
Yeah.
I'm in shock.
Unless Marty decides to veto himself. Most skilled? Yeah, I mean, with all due respect to Raven, like I said, Chris Benoit was just flawless in the ring. It's hard to find anybody that was, especially in that time period. It's going to be hard to find too many guys that were better workers than Chris Benoit was. So I'm going to go with Benoit for most skilled. Memorable matches. Yeah, both guys to me did have several memorable matches, but I'm just going to, my first thought, like with Raven, the first match that instantly came to mind, good or bad, for Raven was when he lost the U.S. Championship to Goldberg back, I think, in early '98. That was just the first one that popped into my head. Where Chris Benoit, the first match that popped into my head was that, was it a Falls Count Anywhere match he had with Kevin Sullivan?
Yep.
And it ended up, they went through tables and somebody landed on poor Jacqueline, I believe.
Yeah.
It was, I think they were fighting in a restroom and somebody got their head slammed in a stall door. And Chris Benoit, if I remember, came out victorious in that match. And that was, again, the first match that just popped into my head. So just kind of going off that, you have Raven losing the U.S. title to Goldberg. But then on the other hand, you have Benoit winning a Falls Count Anywhere match against Kevin Sullivan with bathroom stalls, tables. So I'm gonna go using those two matches. I'm gonna pick the Benoit Sullivan match. So memorable matches, I'm gonna give to Benoit. So looks like based on that, most skilled, memorable matches, both going to Chris Benoit. So again, Chris Benoit moving on. We got another tiebreaker here. So
Yeah.
Tommy,
Here we go.
Well, interestingly enough, as soon as Marty started this and said, "Oh, another tough one here," my first thought was, "Oh, it's not tough at all. My God, this is Benoit all the way." But then
Okay.
you do have to think about it and start going through the criteria. And again, my memory not quite as good in terms of the matches as your guys. But in terms of work, I'm not going to drag it on. I mean, it's Chris Benoit. Marty said one of the best of all time. There's just no doubt he is, or he was. Memorable matches. I don't remember matches per se. I remember skits. Some like promos. I remember like Raven being attacked by fans. But Chris Benoit, I mean, not only was he a four horseman, which is got a tremendous amount of prestige, he was a good four horseman. There was some guys that weren't good.
oh,
And
no.
if I'm not mistaken, Chris Benoit, and again, I probably misspeak all the time in this stuff, and please correct me when I do, but didn't he hold every major title? TV, US, and World? He might even have been a tag champ
I think
during
he
the
might have
Nitro
been.
era. So, I mean, if I am accurate with that, I mean, that is tremendous accomplishment there as well. I mean, in terms of like a charisma and mic skills, it clearly was Raven. but I'm gonna say the other stuff outweighs it. Literally one of the all-time greats in my opinion, and really was in prime form in that Nitro era. I'm gonna go with Chris Benoit. So then it's up to Marty if he's gonna use a veto.
Nice.
Absolutely not. I'm actually shocked with myself that I went with Raven, but again, I tried to stick to the criteria, especially in this episode, the criteria I picked. But if it was just the best wrestler, like the best worker alone, it's Benoit heads and above. And again, no disrespect to Raven, but no, I appreciate that. No chance of a veto for me on that one. So Benoit moves on. He'll be going up against Ultimo Dragon in the next round. But
Nice.
our third matchup of this week is Rey Mysterio versus Lance Storm. And I believe, Mike, you would be going first.
Wow. This is, and then, because our thing here, of course, for anybody that's listened, is we don't really know ahead of time what the topic's going to be. So whichever one of us has decided on the topic, it's more or less sprung on the other two on the day of recording.
Yeah.
That's, for people that have listened, or if you're new to the podcast, generally the topic is brought to the forefront the day that we, as we're recording, basically. So, and this is no different. So, without much preparation or anything, these topics are often difficult in the matchups. Mysterio and Lance Storm just, goodness gracious. I could probably take 5 to 10 minutes just to think about, the skill level. Both guys, phenomenal workers, which is probably going to be said, many times throughout this episode. But, oh man, I'm just going to go with my gut and say, jeez, I'll go with Rey Mysterio. And again, that's all due respect to Lance, because Lance is phenomenal. And maybe another guy that you could say was underrated. But just to throw a name out there, I'm going to go with Rey.
You can't go wrong with that. I mean,
yeah, memorable matches. I'm going to go with Rey again. Lance, came in. I think Lance came in with the later years. Unfortunately for him, he was there the later years of WCW, starting to decline a little bit. Unfortunately, I don't remember a whole lot of his matches. Of course, I remember the work, him being a fantastic worker, but there's not any one match that kind of jumps out at me where Rey had, classic matches with everybody from Dean Malenko to Jushin Thunder Liger and Ultimo Dragon. So Rey had a lot of classic matches throughout his tenure in WCW. So I'm gonna go with Rey again. So most skilled, memorable matches both go to Rey. So my pick to move on is Rey Mysterio.
Nice. And Tommy, I think you're next on this one.
Okay. Boy. Yeah, if you just take the careers in general, I mean, Rey Mysterio, as we said with Chris Benoit, is one of the all-time greats. So you could just stop it right there and just move Rey on. But you don't want to discount Lance Storm. I mean, he, again, probably an underrated. His biggest thing, I think, was his charisma wasn't quite, I'm trying to think of the right way to say it. They did try to give him a boost in appeal, I guess. Didn't he have Major Guns with him? Was that who that was?
Lance, yeah, with another cast of characters.
Major Guns. Oh, God in heaven.
She was muscular. She was muscular.
And, I mean, I think he then took his lack of charisma, so to speak, and used it to his advantage. So when I think of him, Wasn't he the "let me be serious for a minute" guy?
Yeah. Yep.
Um, but then Rey, you think about, and it's almost a shame. But I try to be honest with the first thing that pops into my head, and sadly enough, the first thing that pops into my head of Nitro era Rey is him getting spiked into the trailer by Kevin Nash.
Oh. Yep.
But however, that does nothing to detract from the body of work. Lance, very accomplished. Again, a ton of titles in WCW. But, and I know we're just taking the Nitro era, so you can't take the entire career. But even with the Nitro era, I mean, Rey Mysterio Jr. is just on another level. I mean, he was on top of his game. Mike, I mean, I don't know. They didn't give him a whole lot of opportunity on the mic. But I'd say I'd give him a slight edge over Lance because he wasn't great on the mic. Work and skill, we're comparing apples and oranges because it's two different, completely different styles, and both were fantastic in their particular style. But Rey Mysterio, just a trendsetter, so I'd have to go with Rey there as well. So just on that alone, I'm going to go with Rey Mysterio. I'm
Nice.
trying to be a little more brief with my answers and not drag on.
So Mysterio already will advance unless, I go to the opposite and consider using a veto. But I'll be very brief on this. You guys hit the nail on the head with everything you said. One of you guys had said that Lance Storm was underappreciated, and I agree. I think Lance Storm was a very, very good wrestler. He looked great, and like you said, his gimmick of not being, charismatic and let me be serious worked really well. But, and Mike said, he unfortunately came at the end of the Nitro era where it was starting to decline in general. But I agree with you both. Rey Mysterio, fantastic. He's still wrestling today at a pretty good high level. Rey Mysterio was fantastic. Yeah, without further ado, I agree with you guys. I'm also going with Mysterio. He will move on.
Nice.
The next matchup doesn't get a lot easier. We have Dean Malenko, the man of 1,000 holds, versus the man of 1,001 holds, Chris Jericho.
Oh, jeez.
And I'll take this one first. This one, when you talk about the most skilled in the ring, both of these guys fantastic. Different style. Malenko wasn't as flashy and more mat based. And Malenko, I could argue and say he may be one of the most appreciated or underrated wrestlers of all time, just because he was so kind of quote unquote plain or vanilla. Um, Jericho, though, was an amazing worker. He was flashier. He threw in some of the springboard moves and some high flying moves. Boy, man, that's a tough one to me just to pick out of the gate who was the best actual pure worker. But I'm gonna give a slight edge to Malenko on that. Memorable matches to me, Chris Jericho, and maybe I'm blending in more of my criteria into one, but Jericho with his charisma and some of the angles, he had that short-lived feud that never took off where he was challenging Goldberg and he had the fake little Goldberg come out. Jericho had some classic matches with Rey Mysterio and him and Malenko. But for me, when I think of more memorable matches, I do think of Chris Jericho. And then, for me to, I guess now I'd have to use the tiebreaker would be, charisma and entertainment value. That's where Jericho kind of steps way out from Malenko. So I'm going to overall go with Chris Jericho, but I don't think it's by a landslide by any means because Malenko was tremendous. But I'm going to go with Jericho, and I think who would be next on this one? I think Mike, if you want to take this one.
Sounds good. And yeah, this is an interesting matchup because again, both these guys were phenomenal. You know, like I said, Jericho's still doing it to this day. Wow. Let's see, most skilled. Oh man, yeah, both guys fantastic workers. But I'm gonna, I think, give the edge to Dean Malenko, even though, you know, again, all due respect to Jericho, because he did know one more hold than Malenko. But I am gonna, I think, give Malenko the slight edge for most skilled. To kind of jump around here because I haven't even had to use the I guess the tiebreaker yet. So just to kind of throw that out there. You know, obviously entertainment factor and charisma, you're gonna go with, I'd have to say, Chris Jericho. Memorable matches. Oh wow. Like I said, I'm just trying to go with the first thing because in a lot of these cases, these guys, you know, are gonna have so many memorable matches. I'm just kind of going like I did with Raven and Benoit. I'm just trying to go to the first one that pops into my head, whether it's a win, loss, whatever. The first match that pops into my head for either guy is kind of what I'm pointing to. Who, unfortunately, Jericho, there isn't one match. You know, I know he had a lot of classic matches in WCW, but there's not one that really jumps out at me. Whereas Malenko, again, had some classics with Mysterio. The previously mentioned Starcade match with Ultimo Dragon. So yeah, Malenko had some classics there in the, especially, you know, in the early Nitro days. So, memorable matches. I think I'm giving to Malenko. So I believe what,
Wow.
2-1, most skilled, memorable matches. Both going to Malenko. So 2-1. I am, surprising myself because I was a big and, you know, somewhat to this day still am a Jericho fan. But based on the criteria, I'm going with Malenko to move on.
Wow. So we have Tom in the hot seat here for a tiebreaker. And just to reiterate real quick, sorry to jump in, but God, I appreciate that Mike just said, oh, he surprised himself, but he's using the criteria, because I think we try really hard on this podcast to do that, like with the Raven Benoit, and for me, it was tough. But Tommy, it's you, Malenko and Jericho.
Okay, so to me, going with the in-ring work, I mean, that's what Dean Malenko is obviously known for, being so smooth and, you know, and clean with everything that he did. But I think Chris Jericho's right there with him. I've mentioned this on previous podcasts that we've had that I think Chris Jericho, although he gets much due respect, I think he, in some regards, and especially earlier on in his career, is still underrated in many ways. So I think that he had everything Dean had, but he added a little spice to it, and he had, you know, like the spring off the rope type moves and some other stuff to his game. So I'm going to go with Jericho there. Memorable matches, again, you guys are testing my memory of, you know, either around 20 years, which is not all that great, at least when it comes to WCW Nitro. Malenko, again, just being in the Four Horsemen, there's something to be said for that. Chris Jericho. That was WCW run when he had that Rufus guy with him, wasn't it?
Personal security? Yep.
Yeah. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. I mean, was that freaking hilarious or what? And let me say charisma. I'm not even going to say it. If there's anybody listening to this and you think differently, give me a break. But so we all know who wins in the charisma. And then even though this isn't WCW, This is right on the borderline. So what Chris Jericho was able to do when he left WCW, and we all remember him then debuting on WW, I guess maybe it was F at the time. When his
I
name
believe
popped
so.
up as the Millennium Man or whatever the heck he was, that crowd exploded. One of the loudest pops probably in pro wrestling history for Chris Jericho. If that would have been Dean Malenko, I don't think you would have gotten that kind of reaction at all.
Aw.
So,
Aw.
and no offense to Dean, I mean we all love Dean. I mean his body of work, a brilliant mind for the business, still makes enormous contributions to this day. But I'm just going to go with Chris Jericho, and you know I could say, oh, he's still going today. Look what he's doing. But this is all just about the Nitro era. But I just think he was, for the Nitro era, underrated. I really think he was. He was fantastic. I don't think Bischoff used him to his full potential. So Chris
Ooh,
Jericho. So
just
then it's up to
imagine
Mike.
there's so many guys you could say that about, unfortunately, that weren't
Well,
used to their potential.
that
But
is,
I
you
do
know,
agree. Oh no, and I'm not gonna use my veto again. It is hard to use it against somebody like Jericho. Um, even though I picked Malenko, like I said, it wasn't an easy one to pick. Both guys phenomenal, and I have nothing but respect for Jericho. So yeah, I can't veto to knock him out. So Jericho will move on. Sorry, Dean. Love to have you as a guest.
Nice. Nice. Well,
we probably
is
screwed that up, didn't we?
Nope,
Damn
at
it.
least
yep.
I would.
Yep. No disrespect, obviously, to any of the wrestlers who don't win in here. We just go by the criteria, and matchups are everything here on the tournament podcast. And as we get into the second half of the tournament bracket here, we've got, I'm going to say it, I think this is the toughest one yet, and maybe of this whole tournament here. We have Eddie Guerrero going against Canyon.
Oh
Uh,
my
Wow.
God.
that I don't know what to say. Thank God I'm not first. Tom, I think you're first on
Yeah,
this one.
great.
Oh man.
Well, okay. Let's go right out of the blocks here with Canyon. How good was that guy? Again, how many times are we going to say it? Grossly underrated, grossly underutilized. I mean, that Mortis gimmick, they could have ran with that. I mean, I think he made that work really well. I mean, I know what they were trying to do and what they were trying to tie into. I think, or at least I think I know, with the Mortal Kombat type stuff, but
Yep.
and like him and Glacier. But
Oh no.
work wise, just unbelievable. So talented as Canyon. Then you're like, okay, but he's getting matched up against, again, quite possibly one of the absolute all time greats in the history of the sport, in Eddie Guerrero. They were both phenomenal on the mic, hilarious in ring work. I mean, I don't know how you separate them. I mean, because you're like, well, hold on a second. I mean, Eddie Guerrero, give me a break. He's one of the all time greats, and he was in that Nitro era. But so was Canyon. I mean, you don't hear the name as much. But again, I'd love to say this: if you haven't seen Chris Canyon or Mortis back in WCW, as soon as this podcast is over, pull him up on YouTube. He was fantastic, innovative. The things he could do for being a bigger guy. Um, so work, it's like hard to separate him. Mike, it's hard to separate him. Charisma, you'd probably, at least I would, in my opinion, give the slight edge to Eddie. But Canyon had his own. I mean, he was very appealing, especially when they got him out of the Mortis gimmick, and he could actually use the mic. Man, well, when you started this and said that this will be the toughest one yet. You're not kidding. I mean, it absolutely is. Holy moly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me say this. If you're listening to me, try to, come up with a decision here, and you haven't already done so, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. That would help us out immensely. And I say that as filler because I'm still trying to come up with a decision here, and I don't want to. I feel like I can't not say Eddie Guerrero, and I don't want to be in that position because I want to use the criteria and come up with a real educated choice. But I just, the name Eddie Guerrero, everybody knows Eddie Guerrero. But I just feel so bad because Canyon's one of my favorites, him and Perry Saturn, as being just so good, so slick, so clean, but just don't get the due that they should get. And so I want to move him on for that. But looking at the criteria, Nitro Era only, you talk about an absolute shred of an edge, and only because we don't have a choice here, ladies and gentlemen. Matchups are everything, and we've got to make a choice. And we don't know what they're going to be until these names are dropped in the tournament generator. The slightest edge maybe I've ever given any winner of any podcast bracket we've done, I'm going to go with Eddie Guerrero.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't mind me jumping in, Marty, I'll go second here.
Do it.
Oh, nice. Whew, so most skilled. I'm actually going to give the edge, and again, this is just using both, the criteria and factoring in the Nitro era. So what, 95 to 2001, just the Nitro era and the specific criteria laid out. Most skilled, I'm going to give the edge for that period. And again, my personal preference, I'm going to actually go with Kanyon.
Nice.
Both guys, phenomenal workers, as we've said, for pretty much everybody that's, been in the tournament so far. I mean, yeah, both guys were fantastic, but Kanyon, like Tommy said, very innovative. Did a lot of moves that I don't know if anybody had ever seen before. So yeah, I liked, as a kid, Kanyon, I think, a little bit more, just the innovation and man, so I'm gonna go with Kanyon for most skilled. Memorable matches, I'm gonna give the slight edge there to Eddie. Kanyon had again some great matches, but none that really jump out at me as much as Eddie's matches. And the first one that jumped out for Eddie is, I believe, was it Halloween Havoc? I don't know if it was either 97 or 98, but he had a match with Rey Mysterio, which I think may have won Match of the Year, possibly, in one of the major publications, or if not, it was toward the top, but it might have won Match of the Year. I think it was considered a classic.
Oh, no, I apologize. The Streamlabs, it hiccuped for a second. It was frozen, but...
Are we good?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. Piss. But yeah, so Eddie Guerrero had that instant classic with Mysterio at Halloween Havoc. So just based on that, memorable matches, I'm going to go with Eddie. So far, we're 1-1. Entertainment factor / charisma, again, just the Nitro era. Eddie, not to say Eddie wasn't entertaining, didn't have charisma, but I feel like he more came into his own, unfortunately, when he left WCW and went to the WWF, especially, once it got closer to the mid-2000s and he became the world champion there. I think he really came into his own. But in the Nitro era, I feel like Kanyon actually provided more entertainment, again, for me personally. I was a big fan of the Mortis gimmick with the mask and the look. And then he had the, what about me? What about Kanyon? Or there was the Positively Kanyon era where he was carrying around DDP's book and doing the diamond cutter or Kanyon cutter, I believe he called it. And I think I don't know if he dyed his hair blonde or had a blonde wig on. trying to look like DDP. So all that stuff to me was very entertaining. So based on that, most skilled, most entertaining. It's surprising me again, but I'm going with Canyon 2-1 to move on over, like you said, Tommy, one of the best of all time, Eddie Guerrero. But again, criteria, time period, I'm going with Canyon.
Wow.
Can't go wrong.
No, it is shocking because, like I said, Eddie is one of the, and deservedly so, considered one of the best of all time. But yeah, Canyon was, for me, very underappreciated, and yeah, he's moving on in my book.
Well, this is a very interesting crossroads. This is something that I am literally on the edge. My decision right now is, do I even continue doing the tournament podcast with my brothers? Because I don't want to have to pick. And the easiest way out would be to just log out here and just quit. Holy smokes. Eddie Guerrero, if you're looking at, his whole career, which we're not, we're just doing the Nitro era, Guerrero carved out an incredible career, even though I didn't follow the WWE portion much at all. I know he had some classics. He won the world title. But again, just sticking here to Nitro, talking about who is the more skilled in the ring, boy, oh boy. I mean, Guerrero was fantastic. He threw in the high flying. Canyon, equally as fantastic. And he was, I think, is the nickname stated, the innovator of offense. Yeah, he came up with moves that it just blew you away. I mean, boy, on a slight, man, I think for the skilled part, I might go with Canyon on a slight edge. The second part of the criteria would be memorable matches. For memorable matches, I can't think of any particular matches per se of Canyon, but Eddie Guerrero and Mike, you actually mentioned one of them. I know he had a couple tremendous matches with Rey Mysterio. Um, Eddie Guerrero was, an instant classic anytime he stepped in the ring. Canyon, great, but I can't think of any specific matches. When we talk about then, a tiebreaker with the charisma slash, entertainment value, Guerrero was great. He had some comedy with his nephew Chavo. I think he honed his gimmick even better, I hate to say, in WWE. But when we're talking about this Nitro era, I just kind of, I guess it's a general question, maybe even to both my brothers here, but talking about Canyon, who better? I mean, literally, who better than Canyon? Canyon was so entertaining and incredible. I'm actually, I'm shocked too. I'm going to go with Canyon to give him a 2-1 overall. Unless, Tom, would you consider using your veto for the Hall of Famer, Eddie Guerrero?
Well, I'm going to be completely honest. I'm not joking and trying to get a laugh here. As I heard both of you talk, if you went with Eddie, as I did, I was seriously probably going to use my veto on myself and go with Canyon. Because, yeah, Canyon, again, look him up, guys. If you don't know what he did, watch some of these matches, these promos. He was phenomenal. Just phenomenal. So, yeah, no, I'm actually happy you two went with Chris, and I am not not going to use a veto.
And we have Canyon moving on, and we almost had a controversial first ever, um, one of us brothers using the veto against, ourselves. But Canyon maybe in a surprise or a shocker moved on over Guerrero. This next bracket, now keep in mind, listeners, this is just regarding this Nitro era, which is basically 95 through, I guess you can say 01. I think they were purchased at the very beginning of 01. But we have Sting versus the Nature Boy Ric
Oh my
Flair.
good Lord.
And I think, Mike, you'll be going first on this one. But the reason I left, Ric Flair in there, yes, he was at the start of Nitro era. I think he was like, if not 50, real close to it. But Rick did have some really good matches still. So I had to leave him in there. But anyway, I digress. Mike, you go first with Sting versus Ric Flair, Nitro era.
Oh wow, this is an interesting one. Man, so we're basically talking, like you said, even though Rick was in his mid to late 40s, still had some I'll say classic, some good matches. And Sting, this was right around when he transitioned into the Crow, and yeah, this is an interesting one. Most skilled. Oh man. Wow. Just off the top of my head.
Excuse me.
And again, just using that time frame, I think most skilled. I'm gonna go with Sting. I mean, obviously, if this was overall, there's no doubt, and I, love Sting. People that don't know, Sting is possibly my favorite wrestler of all time. But there's no doubt overall that Ric Flair is the GOAT, and I think it's at least amongst the three of us that's universal that Rick is the best of all time.
Yep.
So overall, you would say Rick's more skilled, but using that Nitro era time frame, I'm gonna go with Sting. I think that's when Rick started to lose a little bit of his skill and became more of a brawler where he would punch, chop, he'd hit people in the groin a lot, and not that wouldn't be effective, but yeah, for skills, I'm gonna go with Sting for that time frame. Oh wow, memorable matches. Again, I'm trying to remember some of the matches. I know Rick had, match with, I think, well, he had a match with, Conan, I believe, when he win the U.S. title, I think, from Conan at one point, and then he had matches with Eric Bischoff in later years. I think he had a match with Kurt Hennig after Hennig slammed his head, possibly legitly slammed his head in a cage door. Oh, Rick had some matches that jump out, but obviously Sting was possibly not even possibly. I don't think you can argue that Sting was the hottest he had ever been in his career at that point as he became the Crow. He had, whether you love it or hate it, that match with Hulk Hogan at Starrcade '97 that had been built up for a year and a half. The match ended up in controversy and possibly, resulted in the ultimate decline of WCW, but it was still, it was the culmination of a year and a half build up. Oh man. Whew. I guess just because that Starrcade match, again, it was a bizarre match, even though Sting won. It was bizarre, but just because that match jumps out at me more so than any one match that Rick had in that time frame, I'm gonna go with Sting on that one. I mean, entertainment value, even though I don't really need the tiebreaker. Obviously, Rick. Oh man, the charisma, the mic skills. I mean, Rick, even to this day, when he's out there, is just as entertaining as anybody in the business, in my opinion. But we don't really need that criteria because I already said most skilled, memorable matches. I'm going with Sting. So my pick to move on, again, just for the Nitro era, is Sting.
Tom, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start off by saying that I am a Surfer Sting fan. in this Nitro era, I know he started the Nitro era with, I don't know if he was the quote unquote old school surfer Sting. I know he had the brown hair. I didn't like that iteration of him as much. And I don't know if I've ever mentioned this or we've ever talked about this. I'm just not a huge fan of that Crow Sting. I never was.
Oh no.
I think the beginning where they just kind of like had him up in the rafters and there was like that anticipation was kind of cool, but never a big fan. I just liked him more as the Surfer Sting, but again, I'm the little bit of an older generation, so I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. Ric Flair certainly was not in his prime during the Nitro years. But so if we just take a quick breakdown of criteria, we're talking about work. Rick's one of those interesting ones that, and like Hulk Hogan in a way, that when I think of work initially, I think of just, like offensive ability, innovation. Neither one of them were like that. Rick and Hogan, again, just bringing in as an example, were quite limited in their offensive moves, I guess you would say. Excuse me. But what separated Rick was that ability to sell and to make the other guy look so damn good, which he did better than anybody ever. And then you talk about Sting on the flip side. I mean, Sting, it's not like his offensive repertoire was anything special. I mean, he was, kick, punches, whip you into the turnbuckle for the Stinger Splash. I mean, he didn't have a whole lot that he was doing.
You must have forgot when he would slam people's faces into the mat coming off the ropes.
Oh, that's true. He'd catch him and do like that bulldog type face plant.
You forgot that.
Yeah, I did forget it.
Whatever.
But even in that era, I mean, in terms of in-ring work, I'd go with Rick. Mike, again, just like earlier when I refused to answer or say something, I'm not even going to go any further with Mike. Sting, God bless him, did get better as his career went on, but we know who wins on the mic.
Oh, no.
Memorable matches, again, that's hard for me just because I'm, so when I think of Sting from that era, I just think of the Crow and I think of the rafters and coming down and, beating up people with a baseball bat. And you didn't know if he was good or bad, and then if he was NWO or not, and coming down. I think he saved DDP once. I think of those things, and then with Rick, from that era, unfortunately, what I think of first thing that pops into mind is not in the ring. It's that damn promo against Eric Bischoff, where he told him he hated his guts. Absolute clever. Probably the best promo ever, at least in my opinion. And then charisma. I mean, give me a break. We know who wins there too. So I'm going to go with Rick. Again, as we go on here in the podcast, and I think we're already well over an hour, and we're not even through the first round. I try to curtail my thoughts somewhat, so I'm just going to say Rick.
Oh, no.
Even though this was not, Rick was declining at this point, and he cut his hair. It's
Marty,
still Rick.
Ooh,
do what's right, Marty. Remember the era.
I have a very tough tiebreaker here for me personally, but let me jump in again. Yeah.
And I can help you with something, and I'm rudely going to jump in.
Do it.
This might help you decide.
You
ready?
No.
Yep, do it.
Woo!
Wow.
Oh, well, okay. Then on that note, I'm going to say, ow! Don't forget that either.
Right.
Now, don't do that. Woo!
Ow!
I can't believe this. I'm about to slam my headset down.
This has become the damnedest promo we've ever had here. This is like the Jay Lethal and Ric Flair face-off from TNA. I love it. Well, again, focusing just on this Nitro era, it's this is interesting because with Sting, you have to think Sting did not wrestle for over a year. I don't know how long. I know it was at least like a year and a few months that Sting did not wrestle. So that takes out a big chunk of the equation. You could also say when Sting came back, he disappointingly wasn't very tan, but that's for another, topic. But
And he
Rick,
lost a lot of mass too. I mean, on a
yeah, that,
serious note, I know he was going through a lot of personal issues, but
yeah,
his
yep,
look declined.
yep. He was pale.
So just say Rick and
Yeah,
let's
yep.
move on here.
Ric Flair, I mean, yes, his skills were definitely declining. Um, Two different wrestlers, but I still think for this first piece for the skilled, I'm still gonna go with Rick
Oh
because
God.
Rick, um,
Oh boy.
he had some good matches. He had a great match with Bret Hart. It sold out, and I think it might have been '98. Mike, I think you mentioned maybe Flair against Guerrero. I know they had a good match. So Rick
Yeah.
could still put on some good wrestling matches. Sting, is Sting. I just don't think he was that skilled of an actual worker. But when we go to the second part of the criteria, memorable matches, um, I have to give Sting this one because of that Starcade encounter with Hulk Hogan. Again, it could have been more if Sting came in and had his head in the game, brother. If he was tan, you don't know what could have happened, but that is arguably the most memorable build up and match in the history of Nitro with Sting and Hogan. So I'm gonna give Sting that one. So that brings it to the criteria of charisma slash entertainment value.
Oh no.
The Crow,
Yes.
the Crow. I'm getting intimidated and bullied right now.
Yep.
I think, guys.
Sorry, Steve.
Dang, the Crow gimmick. I did enjoy the Crow gimmick.
Yuck.
It was. I think it was neat because it had never been done, and the anticipation to see who was arguably the biggest star in the company to hold him off for over a year was a gamble, but I think it worked.
Innovative.
But Ric Flair, a promo machine still to this day.
Yeah.
Entertainment value. Later in his career, Rick would throw his clothes off. He would give his shirt a knee drop, or he was always doing something really neat.
Stomp it or
Yeah,
Oh man.
this is just the Nitro era that we're talking about here. But man, I'm trying not to make this personal. I'm boy.
And let's
I'm
not
gonna go
forget,
with
I mean, you talk about great moments when didn't he handcuff himself to the top rope and he said not to cut the feed or go to commercial because if they did, because he was in his underwear when they came back, he was going to be naked.
Well, there you go.
Oh my
That right
God.
there is enough to
Thank you.
push it over the top. Sorry, Mike, and any Steve Borden fan. It is kind of a slight edge. Let's talk about the Nitro era. I'm gonna go with Rick, but
Well,
Mike has the
yeah.
power to veto.
See if he can put his big mouth where his money is.
Wow,
Oh boy.
is he gonna show that he's really a Sting fan here, guys?
Man, was this an abuse of power? But I will not.
There we go.
I will not
Damn right you
use
won't.
my veto. I stand by my pick of Sting again for that time frame, but unfortunately, mistakes were made and Rick is moving on. But in all seriousness, yeah, I mean I can't use a veto, against Rick. Like I said, I love Sting and said he's probably my favorite of all time, but Rick's up there as well, and I agree. Rick was, as entertaining as anybody in the business. So even though I did go with Sting, yeah, I mean, you can't argue against the Nature Boys. So I don't have any, problem with him moving on. So
Nice. I'd love to hear it. Now my pulse is getting back down to normal, so we'll jump to the next bracket here. We have Booker T versus DDP. And I
Oh.
think I'm first on this one. So the first part of the criteria is skilled in the ring. Let me just start this out by saying DDP to me could also be considered very underrated. He worked so hard. All the stories you hear, they say he might have been the hardest working wrestler in the business for the preparation and the training. I mean, he was like a 30-something-year-old rookie when he started, before the Nitro era. But I say all that to say Booker T was on another level. Anyone that knew me, Booker T is still one of my favorites of all time, and I think one of the best wrestlers of all time. For the skilled wrestler piece, to me, no disrespect to DDP, but without a doubt, it's Booker T. When we go to memorable matches, um, boy, I think of Booker T. He had a phenomenal best of 7 series with Benoit. I think over the TV title. DDP, I think of him in the absolutely sensational match that he had with Goldberg at Halloween Havoc. The DDP match was definitely, I think, higher tiered because he was going against Goldberg. DDP had, I think, more main event type matches. So for memorable matches, I'm gonna go with DDP. So I need to do a tiebreaker, which is going to be the charisma / entertainment value. Booker T, started out in Harlem Heat, and I think maybe the last couple years of Nitros when he really separated himself as a singles worker, and again one of the best of all time. Um, he was not bad on the mic. He cut a classic promo on Hulk Hogan, letting Hogan know he was coming for him. DDP, though, I think was charisma personified. He came through the crowd. He was like, is his nickname, the People's Champion. I mean, look at DDP. He was a little older. He had cigar burns on his body. He was what every man wanted to be. Well, maybe just me. Maybe just me. I don't know. But it's for the charisma and entertainment, boy, I'm gonna go with DDP, and therefore, surprisingly, for the winner of this round, I'm gonna go in a very slight edge to DDP, and I feel kind of like Tom said with his Guerrero pick of Canyon, because Booker T is one of my favorites of all time, and literally on a personal level. I know Mike knows the story. Tom, you might too, but Booker T's name was almost prevalent in my family, but that's a personal story. I love Booker T, but I'm gonna go with DDT on this one. I think Mike, you're next on this one. I'm shocked.
Sounds good. Well, let's see. Most skilled. Again, lots of respect for DDP, especially like I said, a guy that didn't really become a star. I mean, by the time he became a legit player in WCW, he may have even been in his 40s.
Yeah, I believe he was.
Yeah, and became one of the biggest stars in the company. At 40 plus years of age, which definitely says something about DDP. And he did have some great matches. But for most skilled, I have to go with Booker T. DDP was phenomenal, but Booker T, just his in-ring work, God, he might be up there with the likes of, like a Chris Benoit or a young Ric Flair. Booker T was just flawless and could, do the high-flying stuff just as well as he could do the, the mat wrestling. So with all due respect to DDP's in-ring work, most skilled, I'm going to give the slight edge to Booker. Memorable matches, DDP. Well, both of them had some classics. You know, DDP. You mentioned Marty that match with Goldberg. He had some classics with Kurt Hennig, Raven. But on the flip side, Booker T had the first one that comes to mind is that best of 7 with Chris Benoit. He had some classics with Jeff Jarrett, Saturn, Rick Martel,
Yep.
Disco Inferno, just some of the greats of all time. Oh wow! So both guys have had some memorable matches, but I'm gonna give again the slight edge in this one. I think to Booker T. Like I said, DDP was in that world title picture, I think, a little bit longer. Like I said, that match with Goldberg, and I believe it was Halloween Havoc. The one year was phenomenal, but yeah, I remember the best of 7, and I remember Booker against Rick Martel and Saturn. I believe he took them both on the same night at, I think, a Super Brawl for the TV title. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Booker T. So without even needing that third criteria, which I just to kind of throw it out there, entertainment factor, charisma, I may give the slight edge in that case to DDP. But since I already gave most skilled and the matches to Booker, for me, Booker T's moving on, creating a tiebreaker for Tommy.
Of course it is.
Nice.
All right. Yeah. Wow. Work. Let's just start there with our criteria. Work and in-ring skill. DDP, again, maybe falls in the underrated category, but Booker T was polished. What he could do for a man of his size, the agility, so clean, so slick. The ability, I think, very impressive to transition from one of the top tag team wrestlers in the world to one of the top singles wrestlers in the world, because it is much different. And he was able to do that seamlessly. I'd give that edge to Booker. On the mic, I think they gave DDP more like opportunity, like to kind of take over the show and come down to the ring and have the mic on his own. So I can't penalize Booker for not having that opportunity given to him. And he was damn good on the mic too. So that one's tough. I'd probably call him even on the mic. I'd give the work rate to Booker a little bit. Memorable matches, again, I keep saying it with all these, and I'm trying to be somewhat quick here. It's hard for me to go back and remember that. I haven't really watched much since those days. I remember DDP as La Parka. That's what comes to mind. When he beat Randy Savage. With Booker, I don't have anyone that distinctly stands out. But so memorable match, I mean, I guess I'd give that and just using this criteria, and that's what we judge by is the criteria. I'd give it to DDP there. And then charisma, boy, that's tough. Because they were both very charismatic. Again, I think DDP was given more opportunity to shine, but I'm not going to let that detract from what Booker T was able to bring to the table. Okay. I keep saying I don't want to drag these, and I would kind of just put in a vote that maybe in the second round here, that since we've already used a lot of criteria and explanation in the first round, that maybe in the second round we just kind of pick a winner and we roll.
Oh yeah, 1 minute time limit.
Yeah, we're running long here, but with all that being said, I'm going to give the slight edge to, again, possibly an underrated all-time great, Booker T, in my opinion.
Yes.
Nice.
So Booker T moves on, and it comes to me, there's absolutely no chance of me using the veto, and I'm not trying to piggyback off of Tom earlier with his Guerrero Canyon conundrum, but there was a chance I was going to veto myself as well this one because Booker T. I can't say enough how much I like Booker T.
Heck?
Even though I went with DDP, but good. Booker T moves on.
All right, hold on. Pause before you move because it looks like it froze again. I don't know.
F me.
Okay, there it went. Yeah, it's like Streamlabs is like I have our graphic, with the fire and the three of us, and that way I don't have to edit it in later. So it's all ready to go. And it's like the fire and that is still moving. But if I'm looking at the audio mixer, it's like it just locks. And I'm assuming it's not recording our voice, but it's back on now. But I don't know what the hell's going on with it. But all right,
Okay.
go ahead.
Well, and yeah, I think we should try to stay under a minute or about a minute tops in the second round for each of our choices. I agree. I was going to suggest that as well. But we are now on the last match of the first round here. We have Curt Hennig versus Bret Hart.
Wow.
You talk about two legendary classic wrestlers. And Mike, I think you're first on this one.
Oh man, yeah, this you may have saved the best for last here
Thank you.
because this is, man, this for at least for me, this might be the most difficult one because, like I said, both of these guys were phenomenal beforehand, phenomenal in WCW. So it is, man, most skilled. I don't want to drag this out, but this is difficult. So, man.
You can drag it out a pinch. This is still the first round.
Oh, that's true. Just, oh, man. I love both of these guys. I'll just say that right off the bat. I'm a fan of both of these guys. Their work is phenomenal. Oh, man. I'm just going to go with, I hate to do it. I'll go with Bret Hart. With slight edge, most skilled, and that is, again, all due respect to Curt, because you could go either way. Curt was phenomenal. Just the offense, the offense, the selling, especially, may have been, at least in my opinion, the best of all time. Curt was amazing, but I'll give the edge to Bret. Memorable matches. Wow, both guys. Again, had some fantastic matches. Unfortunately, Bret was probably not utilized as well as he should have been in WCW. I'll give the, memorable matches. I'm going to, I think, go with Curt Hennig. Just the one match that jumps right out at me is a match he had, and you'll remember this, Marty, with DDP at one of the Sturgis events.
Oh, well, I remember. Yep.
When Curt put on one of the greatest selling showcases maybe in professional wrestling history. It may have been at Hog Wild or Road Wild in '97, possibly. It was phenomenal. So just on that alone, I'm gonna go with Curt Hennig for memorable matches, entertainment / charisma. Man, wow, this one's rough, but I think again, I hate to do this to Curt, but with Bret, the first thing I think of is the classic promo in which he gave props to underrated superstar El Dandy.
Yep.
Anybody that is not familiar with that, it's one of Bret's best promos, and at least for me, one of the best maybe ever, and one of the most underrated promos. Just hilarious.
Yeah.
Showcased, Bret's comedic skills. So yeah, for entertainment factor, I'm gonna go with Bret. So yeah, 2-1. It looks like I got Bret moving on here over Curt Hennig. I don't want to say I hate to do it because I love Bret as well, but it's man, I hate not moving Curt on, but again, matchups are everything. So with a slight 2-1 edge, I got Bret Hart.
Tom, you're next up.
Okay. Yeah, just when you think they can't get any more difficult, we all have our Mount Rushmore of wrestlers, all-time greats. People could argue that Curt Hennig and Bret Hart could be four of the greatest of all time. So that's what makes this matchup very, very difficult. By the time they both got into the Nitro era, I'd say they were both past their prime. I know Curt had,
Oh boy, we'll cut that part
at
out.
least at some point, some medical issues, and I think Bret just, I don't know, didn't seem to really be into it quite that much. So, but looking at the criteria and trying to be as quick as possible here on the mic, Curt Hennig was great. I'm going to say it's a tie because maybe an underrated part. Bret's known for the in-ring work and literally one of the greatest of all time in terms of his being a technician in the ring. But I mean, he was damn good on the mic. Just didn't get the opportunity, that Curt Hennig did, at least for the most part. But Bret Hart, phenomenal on the mic. I'm going to give him a tie there. In-ring work, I don't know how you separate them. Again, two of the absolute all-time greats. Curt Hennig, equally good in terms of offensive and defensive prowess. Bret Hart skewed a little bit heavier on the offensive side than his sell on the defensive side, as I call it. But still, I gotta say a tie for this one.
Nice.
Memorable matches. I just get the first thing that pops into my head for Bret Hart. It's not a match, really. It's having that steel plate under his hockey jersey when Goldberg speared him and he knocked out Goldberg. For Curt Hennig, there's not one thing in particular that stands out to me necessarily. But again, I'm older, so my memory is going. Charisma. Gosh, again, in their own special way. I mean, they're almost a tie. I mean, they're like, my God, they're like carbon copies of each other.
Yeah.
That's what made that one so hard for me, because it is hard to pick one over the other.
But just going in the Nitro era.
Oh, yeah, that's the criteria.
Only using the criteria of the Nitro era. Bret came in towards the end. So really, that is the only determining factor here with me. Even though Hennig came in and he got injured or something in there. I forget exactly what happened to him, so he wasn't on the top of his game at that point either. We know what happened to Bret with the kick from Goldberg, but I don't know. I'm just going to flip a coin and say Curt Hennig instead of dragging this on and groaning and moaning. I'll go with Curt Hennig.
Nice.
Slightly. About as close as an edge as I did with Eddie Guerrero and Chris Kanyon.
Well, this puts me in an extremely awkward position. Last matchup of the first round, a tiebreaker between, again, literally two of the best of all time. Let's just, and I'm not going to go real long, but look at the microcosm of WCW at the time. When you think they had Curt Hennig and Bret Hart on the same roster and they weren't both superstars, it just says something how poorly WCW went, awry after like the NWO, especially with Bret Hart. He was arguably a top 3 superstar in wrestling when he came over from WWE or F at the time. Bret Hart was a big deal. The screw job had taken place. WCW could have elevated him and just it could have been insane, but they ruined Bret Hart. With Curt Hennig, he did have I know a really bad back, so he was off for periods of time. Both men were getting older, but when you talk about just this Nitro era, the best worker, I'm going to give the slight edge for at least the skilled piece to Bret Hart, just slightly. I think just health-wise probably had something, to do with that. And then Second piece of the criteria, memorable matches. I mean, maybe because I'm such a Ric Flair mark, I think of Bret Hart against Ric Flair again. It sold out. It was a very good match. Bret Hart won the match, which was probably the right thing to do at that point. And if they could have kept Bret Hart going in that fashion, he could have been a huge star. Kurt Hennig, yeah, he had some awesome matches with DDP, as Mike mentioned, the one at either like Hog Wild, where it was a turnbuckle, head into the turnbuckle, and Kurt Hennig sprung off the bottom rope and probably went 7 to 8 feet across the ring. Amazing sell. But as far as just again using the Nitro criteria, this is so hard. But oh man, the charisma piece and entertainment value, I guess I'd have to give the slight edge to Bret Hart. Kurt Hennig didn't have quite that personality that was over the top. It was just his ring work that did all the talking, but by an extremely slight edge. I'm going to go with Bret Hart. I believe that's Bret Hart in a 2-1. Now,
it is.
Tom, at the very last round here, you could veto and move Kurt along.
Well, and I do like to use my veto if I feel strongly on something, and this one was too close to call. And Bret Hart, I mean, there is, there's a reason they call him the best there ever was, is, and ever will be. Or maybe he calls himself that. But regardless, it's true in many regards. So no veto here.
Nice. Well, we have our second round all set here to go, guys.
It's going to be rapid fire too, ladies and gentlemen.
It is, because we've gone very long. So each pick, we have less than a minute. We're going to have to stick to it, or we may get booted off of this. So second round, first matchup, Ultimo Dragon, Benoit. Tom, go.
Benoit.
Nice.
Okay. Mike.
Wow.
He's taking his time.
I'm gonna agree. Both guys phenomenal. But wow, you could go either way. But man, actually, to hell with it. To create a bit of a conundrum right out of the gate here for round two, I know I said Benoit, but actually, you know what? I'm going Ultimo Dragon. The name says it all. He's ultimate. What do you have to say, Marty?
Wait a minute. Can he do that? He did say Benoit. Judges?
I don't think you can do that.
I will veto myself.
Oh, he can
Ultimo.
do that.
Well, Mike is going with Ultimo. I am going to go with Benoit.
Oh boy,
nice.
He's Benoit. I mean,
it's the right call.
He was that good.
When you can tell which of us are very educated with the sport and who's kind of flying by the seat of their pants here.
First Rick over Sting, now Ultimo loses to Benoit. It's
getting personal.
Boy. Yep. I'll see you later. Bye.
Ooh. Yep.
Well, we can finish up here.
Second matchup
he's back.
Of the second round. Rey Mysterio Jr. versus Chris Jericho. Mike, go.
Oh, man. I'm going to go with, again, tough one. Oh, man. Taking everything into consideration, I'm going to give the slight edge to Chris Jericho.
Ooh, all right.
Yikes.
I guess I'll go second on this one. Yeah. Holy smokes. Just based on, the charisma and the entertainment, I'm going to go slightly also with Jericho. So Jericho to move on. And last, Tom wants to use a veto for Rey Mysterio.
Do it.
Yeah, let's not forget, too. I mean, there's little nuances to the game, and just like little things when Chris Jericho would have somebody down, or he'd be like going up to the top rope to do a move, and he'd just say that, "Come on, baby!" I just got the biggest kick out of that.
Yeah.
But So with that being said, Chris Jericho as well, 3-0.
Oh, nice. All right. Bottom half of the second round, we've got Canyon versus Ric Flair. I'll go first on this one. Talking just about the Nitro era itself. Oh man,
Oh no, this isn't
can't.
rapid fire.
I know because Ric Flair's involved, but I think I'm gonna stick with the criteria, and I'm gonna try to be very honest and objective here. I'm gonna go with Canyon. God dang it!
That's the right
What?
move.
I know. Daggone it.
I'll edit this piece out. Go ahead and start over, and I'll cut it in.
Tom, you're next.
Oh, well, you're serious.
Yes.
Well, I am too. Chris Canyon.
Ooh, Mike.
Wait a minute,
Canyon.
I do have my veto.
Yes, you do.
Oh, I do have it, Rick. You're not moving on. Canyon for me as well.
Wow.
I mean,
Canyon.
you can't. The skills, ultimately, it's just got to come down to that in-ring work and.
Yeah.
And
we've said it before. Chris Canyon with a K. If you haven't seen him, please look him up. You can look up Mortis as well. And while you're doing that, or right before you do that, and you finish this podcast, please hit like and subscribe. We'd appreciate that. Thank you.
And we have the last match of the second round: Booker T versus Bret Hart. Tom, go.
Booker T.
Ooh. Mike.
Again, just Nitro era. Whew, I think Bret's best years were pre-WCW. Booker T, on the other hand, came into his own in WCW.
Yep.
So it is, both guys phenomenal, but the era, I'm going with Booker T as well.
Yep, it's the criteria.
Let's make that a clean sweep. Booker T also moving on. So we have our semifinals set in a big way.
Wow.
First matchup of the semifinals: Chris Benoit versus Chris Jericho. And I think, let's see, who wins?
3 of the 4 finalists are Chris's.
I was just going to mention that. Yep, in a Booker.
Well, Booker's real name, I think, is Christopher Booker T. So, yeah, incredible. But let's see here. So we have Benoit versus Jericho. I'm just thinking here, Mike, you're up. Go.
Oh wow. Gosh, I mean, there's not going to be any easy decisions at this point. Not that there was in the first or the first round either, but yikes. Just off the top of my head, I want most skilled, memorable matches. I mean, entertainment value, you're going to go with Jericho against pretty much anybody. But skills, man, it's hard to beat Benoit, who said one of the best, flawless. I'm going to give the edge overall, I think, to Chris Benoit.
I will jump in and do this one. This is a very tough one. So close. Wrestling abilities very close. I think the separation again for me is just the entertainment value. I'm going to make this exciting. I'm going to go with Jericho and put Tom in a tiebreaker in the semifinals, Benoit or Jericho.
Well, I am going to also go with Chris Jericho, and the reason being is that entertainment value. I just think his ability on the mic and his ability to really work the crowd and get them involved, where Benoit was obviously just the ring work and was so good, one of the absolute greatest of all time at what he did, but he didn't really appeal or reach out to the crowd, if that makes sense, where Jericho is one of the all-time greats in that regard of really drawing the crowd in and getting them invested in the match, more times than not hating him. But yeah, Chris Jericho.
Chris Jericho will be going
Wow.
into the finals against the winner of Canyon, Booker T. I think I go first on
Thank
this one.
God.
God, is this one of the toughest
Yeah.
ones I've ever done?
Man.
Boy, oh boy. Slight edge. I'm going with Booker T. So slight. Tom.
Man. Yeah, I'm trying to rapid fire. Usually when you say these, I can throw a name out. This is
It was
hard.
tough for me.
Man alive. I'm just trying to. Golly.
It's tough.
Well, you know what? I'm going to kind of cheat here and easily kind of maybe bow out of my pick, so to speak. Since you took Booker, I'm just going to go with Canyon. Because it's a flip of a coin, and that way we'll put Mike in the hot seat.
Wow.
Another semifinals tiebreaker. Mike. Canyon Booker T.
I agree. This is a hard one. Both guys, phenomenal skills. Oh, man. Memorable matches, entertainment. Yeah, I mean, using any of those criteria, it's really hard to separate the two guys. In a way, they were both very similar. I mean, like I said, both phenomenal work. Ooh, wow. So I'm just going to, for that Nitro era, Booker ultimately was more decorated. He won countless tag titles. Obviously, he was I think he won the U.S. TV and world title.
Oh, yep.
Unfortunately, I don't know if Canyon held any gold.
Oh, he did. He held tag team gold.
Oh, that's true with the triad, possibly.
You're right.
Which, may have been a crime because Canyon was so good. He probably should have held more than just one tag title. But
another flop in WCW's booking. They just didn't utilize him properly.
Both guys are just so close, so phenomenal. But just because Booker, I'm going to give him the slight edge because he was more decorated and won more gold during that era. So I'm going to give the edge very slightly to Booker T to move on.
Wow.
And I can't use my veto against Booker T, so don't even ask.
Thank you. Well, guys, we are at the long-awaited moment here. We're at the finals of the best WCW wrestler / worker of the Nitro era. We have Chris Jericho versus Booker T. And Tom, do you want to start this out here?
Well, I don't. Oh, but you need me to. Okay.
But will you? Yeah, will you?
Wow. This is about as tough as the Booker T Canyon. And that's, it's the championship, so of course it's going to be, but okay, just spending maybe 30 seconds longer here. In-ring work, different styles, but very, very equal. Mic skills. Booker T may be somewhat underrated, if that even is possible, but Jericho was just on another level. A slight edge, though, because Booker T was that good to the mic with Jericho. Charisma. I think charisma is just Jericho. And I don't think that it's not because Booker T couldn't. I just think, again, and we probably mentioned it earlier with him specifically and a few of these other guys, that they just didn't utilize him to his potential. You could say that he could have been a long reigning world champion, but I mean, you can only have so many world champions. Oh boy. Okay. I'm not going to do this. I said I wasn't going to do this.
He's getting emotional.
I'm not going to make this long. In the slightest of edges, which we've said that many times as well, I'm going to go with Chris Jericho.
Wow. Mike?
All right. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. Most skilled, to go through the criteria one last time here. Most skilled. Oh, man. It is. Whew. It's a tough one, but oh, goodness. Oh man, just my gut says to go with Booker T. Yeah, you could go either way, but I'm just gonna to throw it out there, go with Booker. Memorable matches. Well, I'll skip over that for a second. Entertainment factor, you know, you gotta go with Jericho. Yeah, I mean Booker T, fantastic. Did cut some good promos. He got, especially when he went out on his own, the later years of WCW, when he got more time on the mic, got better. But yeah, Chris Jericho, it's going to be hard to beat him with anybody when it comes to charisma and entertainment. And again, still, 20, 30 years later, he's still entertaining. So I'll give that to Jericho. So in this case, I'm going to go to the matches for my tiebreaker. And, oh, man, both guys, again, fantastic matches. But I think, kind of like I said about Eddie Guerrero in the first round, as good as he was in WCW, I think he kind of came into his own more, unfortunately, after he went up north. And I kind of feel the same way about Jericho. He was underutilized in WCW and broke out on his, became a bigger star. Once he went to WWF, where Booker T, obviously became a bigger star while still in WCW. So, memorable matches. I think I remember some of Booker's matches again, the Benoit best of 7, and yikes. So I think I'm gonna go with Booker T on memorable matches. So 2-1, I got Booker T moving on. So
Oh boy,
we are going to
man.
create
just a hot seat.
the hot seat for Marty to pick who is the best worker of the Nitro era.
Sit back and enjoy this.
Wow. Okay. Again, criteria extremely quickly. Worker in the ring. Jericho, phenomenal. Athletic. To me, I'm giving a slight edge to Booker T on that because Booker T could do everything that Chris Jericho could do, but I think even a little more. Look at the size of Booker T, and he was probably more athletic. Booker T on in-ring work just slightly for the Nitro era. Memorable matches. Oh boy, yeah, that's let me jump real quick to the other criteria, charisma and all that. I think Tommy made an amazing point. Jericho was outstanding and utilized every second he had on the mic and um, on camera. Booker T, I think that was a good point you made though. Was he given the opportunities to be on the mic as much as some of the others? Maybe not, and it's hard to penalize for that. But Jericho was so entertaining and charismatic. I'm giving that to Jericho. So for me, a tiebreaker would be most memorable matches. I mean, Jericho, I think we can all say he was underutilized. Booker T had some big time matches because he was, the world champion. So he had matches against, Big Papa Pump, some of the quote unquote higher, tier guys. So basically, without further ado, I'm going to give the edge to Booker T and the winner, unless I think Tom went with Chris Jericho. Will he use his veto in the finals?
No, I love to throw the veto around and for a little bit of shock value here and there, but my God, it has to be a strong feeling, and there's just no way you can use a veto against Booker T. It just would be silly. So absolutely not. Booker T is a very deserving champion of this tournament.
There you have it, guys. Our tournament is complete here for the WCW Best Wrestler / Best Worker of the Nitro Era. The winner being Booker T. And
Nice.
Just a quick caveat, anybody listening, again, we were using that specific criteria, not the biggest superstar, the biggest name because, my God, we had Hogan, Savage, Goldberg, all these guys that weren't included. So there you have it. Matchups are everything. This is the Tournament Podcast, the fastest growing podcast in all the. We would really appreciate if you guys would like, subscribe, and comment. Tom, Mike, do you guys have anything to lead us out?
No, nothing specific. This was a little bit of a longer podcast, so if you've made it this far, we really appreciate you. Drop a comment and let us know who should have been in, who should have been out. Do you agree with our winner? We'd love to hear any comments, good or bad. So thank you for listening and or watching. I guess listening is probably a better way to say it.
Yep.
Whether you're watching or listening, either way, the Tournament Podcast with Tom, Mike, and Marty Party. Well, thank you guys for listening. Come back next week for more of the Tournament Podcast.
Who's better than Canyon? No, not your mama.